I slept in my car right in front of my father's house on Thanksgiving night. The smell of pumpkin pie still clung to my hair, and my stepmother's handprint was a red stain on my cheek. The doorbell camera saw everything. The only person who didn't was me. The next morning brought an unexpected invitation, a video as sharp as a blade, and a key to the door they swore I would never touch. My name is Ray Donovan. I am 32 years old, and I live in Silver Haven, Oregon. Living alone in this state means existing in a gradient of damp, pine-scented air and quiet independence. I've built my life this way, calibrated precisely to my own specifications, a life that stands in stark contrast to the one I drive toward every major holiday. Silver Haven is my fortress of solitude, but Riverton Bluffs is the gravity I can't seem to escape. My independence is often mistaken for detachment, but it is really a defense mechanism, honed over 3 decades of practice. The text message arrived just as I was wiping down my already clean kitchen counter. Thanksgiving morning, 9:04 a.m. It was from my father. House is full. Come later is fine. It was not the words themselves, but the punctuation that followed. A single, detached thumbs-up emoji, not a turkey, not a smiling face, a blue-gray thumbs up. It was a digital pat on the head, a message that said, "We are already complete without you." It was a preemptive rejection, a subtle lowering of the portcullis before I had even reached the moat. It was his way of managing his wife, Sloane, by managing me. The text immediately conjured the ghost of Thanksgiving's past, the infamous seating chart. Our family practiced a peculiar ritual. It was not the traditional kids' table that dissolved once everyone hit puberty. No, ours was a fluid, psychological hierarchy. There was the big table, the polished oak monstrosity in the formal dining room, reserved for my father. Sloane, her children from her first marriage, her siblings, and anyone deemed important that year. And then there was the auxiliary table. Sometimes it was a metal card table set up in the drafty hallway. Sometimes it was a counter stool in the kitchen, facing the wall. Once, memorably, when I was 25, it was a patio chair brought inside and placed by the sliding glass door, isolating me in a sea of beige carpet. That is where I, Ray Donovan, always sat. At 32 years old, a founder of a company, I was still relegated to the overflow. I was the structural add-on, the asterisk at the bottom of the family roster. The seating arrangement was Sloane's primary tool of domestic warfare, and my father, her willing collaborator in his silence. He found it easier to disappoint me than to confront her. I looked around my own apartment. It is small, just under 600 square feet, but it is immaculate. The kitchen counters are white quartz, wiped clean of any crumbs. The stainless steel appliances reflect the gray Oregon light. My refrigerator, if I opened it, is mostly bare. A bottle of sparkling water, half a lemon, a container of Greek yogurt, and a vial of insulin for the cat I don't own. Left by a friend weeks ago, but the pantry is stocked, and the spice rack is alphabetized. I build order in my own space because my family life is built entirely on chaos. Sloane thrives on emotional entropy. She creates disorder to maintain control, keeping everyone off balance. My clean lines and empty surfaces are my armor. My father still thinks I do something with computers. The reality is, I founded HarborGrid. Or rather, I did. HarborGrid was a logistics platform I designed from scratch, optimizing supply chains for small-scale agricultural producers in the Pacific Northwest. It leveled the playing field, connecting small farms directly to urban markets, cutting out the parasitic middlemen who demanded 40%. It was complex, necessary work that stabilized food access for 3 counties, and 3 months ago, I finalized the sale of 60% of my equity to a national distributor. The money was not the point. Not really. It was the proof. The validation was banked, literal, and cold. The proceeds were already sitting in a designated account, the seed money for a charitable fund I had not named yet, a fund dedicated to food security. Sloane and my father believed I was still the struggling child, the one who needed their table for a free meal. They had no idea I could buy the table, the house, and the land it sat on. My phone buzzed again, a missed call from my mother's sister, Aunt Mara. She was the last remnant of my mother's side of the family, the only one who saw Sloane for the calculating usurper she was. I swiped to voicemail, pressing the phone hard against my ear. "Ray, honey, it's me." Her voice was tight with static and unspoken meaning. "The pass is looking terrible. They're talking about closing the access road by 3 p.m. It's a whiteout up here. Maybe just stay home this year. Sweetheart, we can do something next week. Stay home where you are safe," her tone said. "Don't come here, where you are not." But the warning had the opposite effect. Sloane and my father expected the weather to be an excuse. They wanted me to stay away. That text, "Come later," is fine. It was a dare, and I was too proud, too stubborn, too tired of being managed, to let them win so easily. I grabbed my keys, leaving the spotless apartment behind. I would drive to Riverton Bluffs. The decision felt less like a choice and more like a compulsion. The drive from Silver Haven to Riverton Bluffs is just over 3 hours without weather. Today, it would be closer to 5. The world dissolved into a swirling vortex of white. The pass was treacherous, just as Mara had warned. Semi-trucks were already pulling over, chaining up. I kept my compact SUV in low gear. My focus narrowed to the 2 faint tracks in the snow ahead of me. This was the part of the journey I usually dreaded, but today, the concentration was a relief. It silenced the internal monologue, replacing the arguments I was having with Sloane in my head with the simple, urgent task of survival. It was during a lull in the wind, cresting the summit, that the AM radio signal clarified. The static faded, replaced by a talk show. A segment came on about community resilience during the holidays. A local farmer was being interviewed. He spoke about the concept of the open table. "Around here," the man's gravelly voice said, "if you have a harvest, you have a duty. We leave a light on, and we set an open table. Anyone who is cold, anyone who is traveling, anyone who is alone, they have a seat, no questions asked. We pull up another chair." The phrase stuck in my mind. An open table. It felt like an antidote, a vaccine against the closed, calculated seating chart waiting for me. It was a concept so foreign to my father's house, where every chair was earned, traded, or denied. The idea began to root, a tiny, warm seed in the frozen landscape of my thoughts. The final hurdle before Riverton Bluffs is the old steel truss bridge over the canyon. In winter, they call it the ice bridge. The road surface freezes before anything else, a treacherous slick of black ice suspended hundreds of feet above the frozen river. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. The car slid, just for a second. A sickening lateral movement before the tires caught traction again. I held my breath until I was on the other side. As the city limit sign for Riverton Bluffs appeared, blurred by the driving snow, I made a silent vow. I am 32 years old. I am not a child. I am not overflow. This year, I will not sit at the kids' table. As if summoned by the thought, a familiar ache radiated up from my left wrist. It was a phantom pain, a muscle memory. It started years ago, after a Christmas dinner where Sloane had accidentally spilled scalding gravy on my arm when I reached for the salt from the auxiliary table. "Oh, goodness," she had chirped. "I didn't even see you there, Ray." It was the cold that brought the memory back. Every time I felt excluded, every time I felt that specific chill of being invisible in my own home, the tendons in my wrist would tighten, a physical barometer of my isolation. It was a dull, thrumming pain, a ghost reminding me of the physical cost of being unseen. I rubbed the spot, the leather of my driving gloves squeaking against the fabric of my jacket. The cold was not just outside the car, it was inside my veins. I glanced down at the dashboard. The wipers slapped, the heater whined, and then a tiny, amber icon flickered to life, the low fuel light. I'd been so focused on the drive, on the storm, on the impending confrontation, that I had forgotten to fill up. It was almost too perfect, a precise digital metaphor for my emotional state. My reserves were gone. I was running on fumes, coasting toward a destination that promised only friction and cold shoulders. I was meticulous in my professional life, budgets balanced to the penny, logistics timed to the minute, but when it came to my family, I was always disorganized, always reactive, always showing up depleted. I pulled into the only gas station open in the blizzard, a bright, fluorescent oasis called The Last Stop. The wind ripped the car door from my hand as I stepped out, the air so cold it felt like glass shards in my lungs. While the pump clicked slowly, I went inside the convenience store. The air smelled of stale coffee, wet wool, and cinnamon-scented pine cones. They had a bucket of flowers by the register, half frozen and pathetic, wilted yellow chrysanthemums and some limp baby's breath, wrapped in crinkling plastic that glittered with frost. They were cheap, they were ugly, but I picked them up anyway. I needed something to hold, a prop, a shield, a peace offering. This was the price of admission. This was the bouquet that proved I had tried, the small, dying thing I would use to buy my way into the warmth, to prove I was not the ungrateful, difficult daughter Sloane painted me to be. I paid the cashier, walked back through the driving snow, and placed the flowers on the passenger seat. I had my offering. I was ready. I pulled up to my father's house just as the sun was surrendering to the storm, bleeding a final weak purple light onto the snow-covered street. It was just before 5 p.m., the appointed dinner hour. The driveway was a strategic puzzle of luxury vehicles I did not recognize, all angled aggressively toward the garage. A new, boat-sized Lexus SUV, a metallic blue BMW sedan, a truck so large it seemed to violate some local ordinance. Sloane's family, the new dynasty, had arrived in force. I parked my own modest SUV down the street, beneath the heavy, snow-laden arm of an oak tree. The house was blazing with light. Every window was a warm, golden rectangle, a perfect picture of holiday cheer. It looked like a greeting card illustration of a place I had never been. I grabbed my two offerings, the sad, gas station chrysanthemums and the glass jar of cranberry sauce I had stayed up late making, the one with fresh orange zest and a hint of cardamom, my peace treaty, my proof of effort. I walked up the meticulously shoveled path. The snow was piled in neat, high banks on either side, a perfect corridor leading to the front door. The door itself was shut tight against the cold, but not entirely. It was open just a crack. And through that crack, the sounds spilled out. Laughter, not polite, quiet chuckles, but deep, raucous belly laughs, the high, sharp clinking of crystal glasses toasting. Music was playing, some instrumental jazz tune that was both festive and forgettable. I stood on the welcome mat, a frozen shadow, listening to the party I was not yet a part of. The smell hit me, rolling out in a wave of impossible warmth. It was the scent of 100 Thanksgivings I only half remembered. Rich butter and sage, the sharp tang of nutmeg, the deep, savory promise of the turkey. It smelled like acceptance. It smelled like everything I wanted. I raised a gloved hand and knocked. The music inside did not stop, but the laughter paused, replaced by a muffled murmur. Footsteps approached the door. A shadow blocked the light from the entryway. The door swung open, and there she was, Sloane. She was immaculate. Her blonde hair was coiffed into a severe, elegant shape that looked like it could deflect small arms fire. She wore a deep green cashmere dress that probably cost more than my rent, and on her face, she wore the smile. It was the one reserved just for me, stretched thin as aluminum foil, brittle and sharp at the edges. It did not touch her eyes. Her eyes, pale blue and assessing, swept over me, from my snow-damp hair to my practical winter boots. Ray, she pronounced my name like an inconvenience. She did not move from the doorway. She was a physical barrier, framed by the warm light, her body language a solid, unyielding no. "Hi, Sloane," I said, forcing my own voice to remain level. "Happy Thanksgiving." She glanced theatrically at the antique grandfather clock in the hallway behind her. "You are late. We are just about to sit down. You know how I feel about disturbing the kitchen schedule." The first lie, it landed right on schedule. The text from Dad said to come later. He said the house was full. He was trying to be polite. "Clearly," she said, her smile tightening. "He is very busy, and he likely forgot that you failed to RSVP by the cutoff. Again." The second lie, this one was an annual tradition. "Sloan, I spoke to him on the phone 2 weeks ago. He said he would tell you. He did not," she cut me off, her voice like ice. "It is a massive imposition. Ray, I had to rearrange the entire seating chart just in case. You cannot simply show up when you please." I held out my offerings, the pathetic, drooping flowers, and the glass jar. I brought flowers, and I made the cranberry sauce, the kind Dad likes. She glanced at the jar in my hand as if I were presenting her with a jar of insects. Her upper lip curled slightly. She made no move to take them. The warm air from the house rushed past her, taunting me. From deep within the house, a man's voice, thick with alcohol, bellowed, "Sloan, who is it? Is that the wine delivery? We're empty out here." Sloan turned her head just slightly, projecting her voice back into the dining room, her tone suddenly light and musical. "It is just the delivery. Darling, be right there." "Just the delivery." The words hit me with physical force, a punch to the solar plexus. I was not a daughter. I was not family. I was not even a guest. I was an errand, a transaction. The vow I made on the ice bridge, the promise to myself that I would not sit at the kids' table, solidified into something hard and sharp. I would not be dismissed on the doorstep. "I am not a delivery. Sloan," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I am coming in." I took a step forward, pushing my shoulder past her. Breaking the barrier of her body, I crossed the threshold. The warmth of the house enveloped me, but it was suffocating, heavy with the scent of her perfume. Her reaction was immediate and reptilian. The paper-thin smile vanished. Her face contorted into a mask of pure fury. Her hand shot out and clamped down on my upper arm, her fingers digging into the muscle like talons. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice a low vibration of rage. "How dare you force your way into my home?" The pain was sharp, stunning. Her nails bit through my sweater and into my skin. This was not a stop gesture. This was an assault. "Let go of me," I said, trying to pull my arm free, but her grip was iron. "Ray?" A new voice. I looked past Sloane's furious face. My father. He was standing at the entrance to the dining room, a cloth napkin draped over one arm, a half-empty wineglass in his hand. He looked confused, his face slightly flushed from the heat and the alcohol. He saw us. He saw his wife's hand clamped on my arm. He saw the look on my face, the mixture of pain and defiance. He saw the flowers and the jar I was still clutching in my other hand. And he looked away. His eyes darted from me to Sloane, and then, fatally, to the polished hardwood floor. He studied the intricate pattern of the Persian rug. He looked at the molding on the far wall. He looked anywhere but at me. That single, cowardly flicker of his eyes, that abdication, was all the permission Sloane needed. She had been validated. I was alone. "She is making a scene." "Robert," Sloane said, her voice shifting instantly to that of a wounded victim. Her grip on my arm did not lessen. "She arrived late, demanded entry, and she is upsetting the other guests. I told her it was not a good time." "Dad, that is not true," I said, my voice rising, pleading with his averted gaze. "She called me a delivery. She will not let go of my arm. Dad, look at me." "Now is not the time. Ray," he muttered, his eyes still fixed on the floor. "We have guests. Please, just do not do this." "Do not do this." He was talking to me, not to her. The cowardice was a physical thing in the room, a thick, sour smell that overpowered the sage and nutmeg. He was terrified of her, and he would sacrifice me to maintain his peace. "So you will just let her hurt me?" I cried out. "You will let her call me trash in your own house?" "You are embarrassing yourself," Sloane shrieked, her control finally snapping, and with her free hand, she shoved me, hard. It was a full-body shove, aimed at my chest, designed to propel me backward, out the door and onto the porch. I stumbled, my balance gone. My left hand flew out to catch myself. The glass jar of cranberry sauce, my offering, my ticket in, slipped from my grasp. Time slowed down. I watched it fall. It hit the hardwood floor with a wet, shattering thud. Dark red, beautiful. Homemade sauce exploded across the entryway. Deep crimson cranberries, glistening with sugar and zest, skidded across the floor, mixed with a spray of sharp, glittering glass shards. It looked like a crime scene. The entire house went silent. The music, the talking, everything stopped. Sloane looked down at the mess. The dark red spread, staining the grout between the floorboards. She looked at her dress, where a few drops had spattered her cashmere. Then she looked at me. Her face was white. Her eyes were no longer cold. They were boiling. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You filthy little bitch." Before I could form a word, before I could even take a breath, her right hand came up. The sound was a crack. It was not a slap. It was a strike. It echoed in the high-ceilinged entryway, louder than the music, louder than all the laughter that had come before. My head snapped violently to the side. A universe of white, stinging heat exploded across my left cheek. The force was so strong it sent me stumbling backward, out of the doorway I had fought so hard to enter. My back slammed into the cast-iron porch pillar. The cold, hard metal bit into my spine, jarring my teeth. My eyes watered, blinding me. I was outside, in the snow. My hand instinctively flew to my face. The skin was already screaming, a throbbing, electric pain that eclipsed the cold. I looked up, disoriented, blinking through the tears and the falling snow. Across the street, a light was on in the neighbor's living room. A figure stood in the window, a dark silhouette, watching. Our eyes met. A distance of perhaps 50 yards. I saw the silhouette pause. And then, slowly, the blinds snapped shut. The sound of the front door was the sound of a gunshot. It slammed shut, the force of it rattling the frame. I heard the heavy metallic thunk of the deadbolt sliding into place. I stood there, alone on the porch. The wind whipped the snow around my legs. The cheap flowers I had dropped were already being buried. Inside the threshold, visible through the small glass pane by the lock, was the glistening, bloody mess of my offering. I did not move for a full minute, maybe 5. Time had ceased to mean anything. The snow began to collect in my hair, on my shoulders. I was a statue of failure. Then, from inside, the sounds began again, muffled, but unmistakable. The clinking of glasses, the scrape of a chair. And then I heard my father's voice, raised in forced joviality. "Everything is fine. A little spill. Everyone, please, let us sit down. The turkey is getting cold." They were going to eat. They were sitting down, passing the warm bread, the gravy, the potatoes. They were sitting at the big table, and I was not even at the kids' table. I was not even in the house. My movements were wooden, robotic. I walked down the steps. I walked past the Lexus, past the BMW, past the massive truck. I walked through the deepening snow on the street to my car. I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. The cold of the interior was shocking. I did not turn on the engine. I just sat, my hands in my lap, shaking. I touched my cheek. It was hot to the touch, and I could already feel the skin tightening. It was swelling. I watched the house. I watched the shadows moving behind the frosted glass of the dining room window. They were passing plates. They were laughing. An hour passed, then 2. The cold in the car became a physical pain, a deep ache in my bones. I turned the key, just enough to run the heater, letting it blast the numbness from my fingers and toes for 10 minutes. Then I turned it off, terrified of using the last of my fuel. Much later, the The front door opened again. Light and sound spilled onto the snow. Guests emerged, loud and happy, buttoning their expensive coats. "Happy Thanksgiving. Sloan, wonderful. Darling, just wonderful." They got into their warm cars, their engines turning over with powerful, confident roars, and they drove away. The house went dark, one window at a time, the entryway, the dining room, the kitchen, finally, the upstairs light, the master bedroom, clicked off. Still, I sat. The silence of the street was absolute, broken only by the faint hiss of the falling snow. Finally, my body screaming from the cold. I gave in. I pushed the button to recline the driver's seat. It whirred backward. I pulled my thick winter coat as tightly around me as I could, wrapping it like a shroud. I tucked my hands into the sleeves for warmth. I pulled my wool beanie down until it covered my ears. I closed my eyes. The image of the shattered jar burned onto my retinas. I drifted into a state that was not sleep, but a numb, freezing limbo. And just before I lost consciousness, I heard it. Faintly, carried on the frozen air. A sound from the dark house. It was my father's voice. He was singing. He always sang after a few drinks on Thanksgiving. A melancholy folk song my mother had loved. He was singing, warm in his bed, safe in his house. He was singing, while his daughter slept in a car 20 yards away, the imprint of his wife's hand burning a hole in her face. The sound was not a comfort. It was a wall of stone and ice, and I was on the outside of it. I woke up because the pain in my neck was sharper than the cold. The world outside the windshield was a single, uniform shade of blue-gray. It was dawn. The snow had stopped. I tried to sit up, a groan tearing from my throat. Every muscle, every joint, had seized in the sub-freezing temperature. My bones felt like brittle glass. My breath was a thick, white cloud in the cabin. I felt my face. The skin on my left cheek was tight, numb, and papery, and it throbbed with a deep, pulsing ache that seemed to be in time with my heart. I flipped down the vanity mirror. The small, harsh light flickered on. The person looking back at me was a stranger. Her eyes were puffy, threaded with red. Her hair was matted with frost where it had touched the window, and the bruise. It was no longer just a red handprint. It was a spectacular, grotesque map of the previous night's violence. A deep, dark purple had bloomed under my eye, fading into a sickly yellow and green at the edges. The distinct, terrible outlines of 4 fingers were stamped onto my cheekbone. It was the face of a victim. My training, the part of my mind that built Harbor Grid, the part that debugged code at 3 a.m, took over. It was a cold, clean click, like a switch being thrown. Document, verify, secure the data. My fingers, stiff and clumsy with cold, fumbled for my phone. It was at 20% battery. Having survived the night better than I had, I opened the camera, reversed the lens, and held it steady. My hand was shaking. Click. The flash was a violent, blinding explosion in the tiny space. I took another, click, and a third, this time pulling back to capture the full context. Me, the bruise, the driver's seat, the snow-covered steering wheel, and the smug, silent house in the background. The evidence was saved, time-stamped. I rubbed my neck, trying to unkink the vertebrae. I looked at the house. It was asleep. All the curtains were drawn. It looked innocent, peaceful. My eyes fixed on the front door, and on the small, silver and black device mounted next to it. Sloan. She was obsessed with security theater, with the appearance of wealth and protection. They had installed a high-end smart doorbell 6 months ago, a Doorbell View. I remembered my father complaining about the monthly subscription cost. Doorbell View. I knew the brand. Their entire marketing strategy was built on their perpetual cloud storage. My heart, which had felt frozen, gave a single, hard, painful kick. It saw everything. It saw me walk up the path. It saw me knock. It saw Sloan appear, her face a mask of polite malice. It saw her block the door. It saw her mouth the words, "Just the delivery." It saw me push past her. It saw her hand clamp onto my arm. It saw my father's cowardice. It saw the jar shatter. It saw the strike. The realization was so profound, so sudden, that I felt lightheaded. She had assaulted me on camera. I turned the car key. The engine groaned, a horrible scraping sound of frozen metal, but it turned over. The heater coughed to life, blowing frigid air. The low fuel light, my amber companion, glowed mockingly. I pulled my phone out again. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold, not anymore. I used my phone's cellular data. I would not risk connecting to their Wi-Fi, even if I had the password. I searched Doorbell View Support. I found the customer service portal. I did not have the login credentials. Those would be tied to my father's email. I used the general contact form. I composed the email, my mind working with a crystalline, cold precision. 2. Support Doorbell View. From my professional family email address. Subject: Urgent security incident. Video retrieval request. My father's address. To whom it may concern. I am writing to request the immediate retrieval of archived video footage regarding a significant security incident that occurred at the address listed above. The incident took place on Thanksgiving evening, November 23rd, between approximately 4:50 p.m. and 6 p.m. Mountain Time. The incident involved a physical assault captured by your device. This footage is critical for a legal filing concerning my personal safety. Please advise on the retrieval process for this archived footage immediately. I hit send. It was a shot in the dark. They would almost certainly reply asking for account verification, but it started the paper trail. It created a time-stamped official query. I looked at the doorbell again, zooming in on one of my photos of the front porch. There was another, smaller logo etched below the lens. Artemis Secure. That was new. Doorbell View must be a subsidiary. Or perhaps Artemis was the overarching security provider. I searched Artemis Secure Riverton Bluffs. A single result popped up. Riverton Home Security Solutions. An authorized Artemis dealer and local installer. This was better. A national corporate entity was a fortress. A local vendor. However, a local vendor had technicians. A local vendor had relationships. A local vendor was a weak point. I filed the name away. Artemis Secure. Riverton Home Solutions. I could not stay here. I put the car in gear, the tires crunching on the fresh, deep snow. I drove away from my father's house, the image of that small, round camera lens burning in my mind. I coasted into the silent, sleeping town on the last vapors in my tank. I found an all-night gas station and filled up, the click of the pump the only sound in the frozen morning. Then, I found the only place that would be open at 6 a.m. the day after Thanksgiving. The Daily Grind, a small 24-hour coffee shop favored by long-haul truckers and insomniacs. The shop was blessedly, overwhelmingly warm. The air smelled of dark roast coffee and burnt sugar. A few solitary men in flannel shirts were scattered at the tables, staring into the middle distance. I ordered a large black coffee. The heat of the cup a painful shock to my frozen fingers. I took a booth in the far back corner, facing the door. First things first, I needed a secure, independent line of communication. My cell phone was, embarrassingly, still part of my father's family plan. It was a relic of my college days that he'd insisted on keeping. Another small, invisible chain. If he or Sloan suspected I was making calls, they could check the logs. I was compromised. I opened my phone's settings. I purchased a temporary, prepaid data-only eSIM, activating it immediately. It took 2 minutes. A new, anonymous connection to the world flowered in the top corner of my screen. I switched all my cellular data and calls to the new SIM. I was off their grid. As the new connection established itself, notifications that had been blocked or delayed flooded in. One was a missed call and a voicemail from Aunt Mara. It had arrived at 11:34 p.m., long after the house had gone dark, long after my father had finished his song. I lifted the phone to my ear, cupping it to hide my face. Her voice was thick, choked, a terrible whisper. She had clearly been crying. Ray? Oh, God. Ray, honey, I called your father's house, just to check, to make sure you got there with the storm. Sloane answered. She was so bright. Ray, so cheerful. She said you decided not to come. She said you had other plans and were just too busy this year. She stopped, taking a single ragged breath. That vicious, vicious woman. I knew she was lying, so I drove past. Honey, about an hour ago. I saw your car. You are still there. Oh, my girl. You are sleeping in your car, in that storm. A sob broke through, a sound of such profound, second-hand pain that it almost broke me. Listen to me, Ray. If you need a seat, you always have a seat at my table. My door is always open. I do not care what time it is. You come here. Please, just come here. I clicked the phone off. I closed my eyes. The warmth of her words, the simple, unconditional offer of a seat, was more painful than the slap. It was the kindness that shattered the fragile shell of numbness I had built around myself. I did not cry. I refused to, but it was a near thing. I could not go to Mara's, not like this. I could not show up on her doorstep, a bruised and beaten refugee, bringing my father's shame and Sloane's violence with me. This was my fight, but her words echoed the farmer on the radio. If you need a seat, an open table. I stared into the black surface of my coffee. The plan, the one that had been a vague, philanthropic someday project, the one I had funded with the sale of Harbor Grid, snapped into sharp, immediate focus. It was no longer an abstraction. It was an imperative. Red Willow Basin. It was a decommissioned ski lodge and equestrian center in Colorado, just outside a forgotten mountain town. I had found it in September while scouting locations. It was run down, dilapidated. But the bones were good. A massive, commercial-grade kitchen that had once served hundreds of skiers, a cavernous great hall with a fireplace you could stand in, and acres of pine-covered land. I had put an offer in, and it had been accepted. The deal was in escrow, set to close in 2 weeks. But the seller, an old mining consortium that just wanted it off their books, had given me early access for inspection and repairs. My original plan had been slow. A 5-year rollout, a community kitchen, a retreat for food tech startups, a place for agricultural workshops. Now, it had a new, urgent purpose. It would be my open table. It would be the anti-Thanksgiving. It would be a place where the only requirement for a seat was that you needed one. I opened my secure messaging app. I had a group chat with my original Harbor Grid development team, the 3 people who had helped me build it from nothing: Arlo, Sierra, and Beck, the smartest people I knew, the ones who had been in the trenches with me, who spoke my language. My fingers, still stiff, flew across the screen. My mind was no longer cold or foggy. It was a clean, sharp, processing core. This was a logistics problem. I knew how to solve logistics problems. Me. Emergency. Who is free this holiday weekend? The reply was almost instant. Arlo, my former CTO, a man who lived on caffeine and cynicism. Arlo, define emergency and define free. I am currently trapped at my in-laws. Watching football I do not understand. I am desperate. What's the play? Me. I am in Riverton Bluffs. I am driving to Colorado. To Red Willow Basin. I am turning it on. Now. Today. Sierra. Colorado? Ray. That is a 12-hour drive, and the passes are a complete mess. Me. I know. This is not a request. It is a beacon. I am lighting the beacon. I am opening a community kitchen. I am tired of people not having a seat. Full details en route. I am leaving now. I need brains, and I need muscle, and I need cast iron, as much as you can find. A pause, then Beck, my quiet, brilliant hardware guy. Beck, on my way. I will borrow my mom's catering van. She has at least 20 heavy-duty cast iron Dutch ovens. ETA unknown. Just send the coordinates. Arlo. Fine. I am expensing the gas. Sierra, route the weather for all of us. Find the gaps in the storm. Beck, inventory the pots. I will handle comms and procurement. Ray, you just drive, and be safe. The throbbing in my face receded, replaced by a cold, humming, electric energy. I was moving. I tossed the untouched bagel and the empty coffee cup in the trash. I walked out into the gray morning. My mind was a spreadsheet. I was building a new network, a new infrastructure. I opened a fresh note on my phone. Red Willow. Stakeholders and activation plan. 1. Fire chief. The lodge's kitchen was commercial grade, but it had been dormant for years. I needed it inspected. Safety first. I searched Red Willow County Fire Marshal. A name came up. Chief Cole. I would call him the second I had reception in the mountains. 2. Grace Hollow Church, the nearest community hub. I would need them to spread the word. A church would know who was alone, who was snowed in, who was hungry. 3. Red Willow Clinic. I would need to let them know a warm space was opening, a place for non-critical patients, or just for nurses coming off a double shift. 4. Warm Miles Food Bank, a local charity I had researched. They did deliveries. They would be an ally, not competition. I could take their overflow. They could route people to me. The list grew. I was building a new family, one based on logistics and shared purpose, not blood and obligation. I got in my car. The engine was warm. I had a full tank of gas. I had a team. I had a mission. Before I put the car in drive, I did one last thing. I went to the county court's online portal. I found the forms for a temporary restraining order, application for order of protection. Petitioner, Ray Donovan. Respondent, Sloan Donovan. I filled in the details, my voice flat, reporting facts, the address, the time, the nature of the abuse. I described the shove. I described the strike. I described being locked out in a blizzard for over 12 hours. Under the section Evidence, I typed, digital photographs of physical injuries sustained, voicemail from witness confirming petitioner's location and respondent's false statements, and video footage from a Doorbell View home security camera, Model V4, pending retrieval from Artemis Secure Cloud Storage. I filled out every box. The logic was clean, cold, and irrefutable. When I got to the final page, the button read, Submit to Clerk. My finger hovered over it. Not yet. The photos were good. The voicemail was powerful. But the video was the kill shot. It was objective truth. It was the end of her word against mine. It would make this unignorable. I would not file until I had it. I saved the application as a draft. It sat there, a loaded weapon, waiting. Finally, I opened my social media apps, the professional-facing accounts I used for Harbor Grid. My face was still too swollen to post a video, but I could write. I opened a new draft. I typed the words that had been echoing in my head all morning, the synthesis of Mara's pained call and the farmer's radio show. I was always taught that a holiday table was a finite space, that you had to earn your seat, that some people belong at the main table, and some belong in the hallway or on the porch. That is a lie. If their table is full, you do not wait for an invitation. You build a bigger table? I looked at the words. It was my new mission statement. It was the truth. I did not post it. Not yet. I saved it as a draft, alongside the restraining order. I put the phone in the cup holder. I pulled out of the coffee shop, turned east toward the mountains, and pressed the accelerator. I was leaving Riverton Bluffs. I was heading for Colorado. I was not running away. I was running toward my table. The drive to Colorado was a 12-hour act of defiant momentum. I did not stop for anything but fuel. The pass was a tunnel of white, a hypnotic, swirling void. My SUV, my faithful Oregon Shell, clawed its way up the inclines. My cheek throbbed with every shift in altitude, a painful purple barometer. I was exhausted, but I was not tired. I was a system executing code. The car was just a peripheral. I arrived at Red Willow Basin long after dark. The access road had not been plowed in weeks. I put the car in four-wheel drive and created my own path, the engine screaming in low gear, the headlights cutting through a curtain of thick, falling snow. The lodge was a massive, sleeping shadow against the mountain. Cold, silent, dead. I climbed out of the car, my legs stiff and unreliable. The air was thin at this altitude, and so cold it felt like breathing in needles. The key, the new one the real estate agent had overnighted me, was stiff in the main lock. It took both my hands, my shoulder pressed against the heavy oak door, to force it open. The smell that hit me was the smell of disuse. Dust, cold stone, and the faint, unsettling scent of mouse poison. I navigated by my phone's flashlight, my boots echoing on the slate floor of the entryway. I found the utility closet. The main breakers were off. I found the generator panel. It was a massive diesel unit, installed for the ski lodge's critical systems. I had tested it on my last visit. I primed the fuel line, my bare fingers sticking to the frozen metal, and hit the ignition. A heavy thunk-thunk-thunk shuddered through the building, followed by a deep, guttural roar. The generator caught. I went back to the main hall and threw the master breakers. One by one, the lights flickered, sputtered, and then flared to life. Not all of them, but enough. Warm, yellow, incandescent light flooded the great hall, illuminating a dozen massive, rustic wooden tables, currently stacked and chained against the far wall. They gleamed with dust. The building was alive. I was in. My first call was to the fire department. My phone had 1 bar of service, routing through the weak rural tower. Red Willow County Dispatch. This is Ray Donovan. I need to speak to Chief Cole. It is an urgent matter regarding the Red Willow Basin property. A moment of static. Cole here. Who is this? His voice was gravelly, tired. Chief Cole, my name is Ray Donovan. I am the new owner of the basin. I am here now. I am turning on the industrial kitchen. The propane tanks are full, but the lines have been dormant. I plan on feeding people here tonight. Anyone stranded by this storm. I will not light a single pilot until you or one of your team has put eyes on the system. I need a safety inspection, and I need your help. A long silence. I could hear him breathing, processing the sheer audacity of the request. You are where? And you are doing what? Opening the kitchen. Tonight, I just need a safety check. I am a systems engineer. I know protocols. I just need the official sign-off before I send half a ton of propane into a dormant line. Another pause. It is the day after Thanksgiving. Ms. Donovan, my team is skeleton. I know, sir. That is why I am doing this. People are alone. People are stuck. I heard him sigh, a sound like sandpaper. I am 10 minutes out. I was gassing up the plow. Do not touch anything. The line clicked dead. Victory. My second call was to Grace Hollow Church. A sleepy, older woman answered. Pastor Ruthie, please. This is Ruthie. Pastor, my name is Ray Donovan. I am at Red Willow Basin. I am opening the hall tonight as a community table. An open table for anyone and everyone. I am cooking a full Thanksgiving meal. If you know anyone in your congregation, or anyone in town, who is alone, or cold, or stranded, please send them up. The lights are on. It will be safe and warm by 7 p.m. Child, she said, her voice cracking with surprise. Do you know what you are doing? That place has been empty for 5 years. I do, ma'am, and I have help on the way. Can you spread the word? I can, she said, her voice suddenly firm. The Lord works in ski lodges. Apparently, I will start the phone tree. Godspeed. Ray Donovan. I hung up and moved. Action. Logistics. I drove the SUV back into the small, snow-choked town. There was one local grocer, but I knew they would not have the volume. I needed a farm. I remembered one from my last visit, a co-op just south of town. I found the farmer, a man named Elias, already out in the blizzard, trying to tarp a collapsed hay shed. I rolled down the window. Are you selling? I yelled over the wind. He squinted at me. my face a mess of purple and yellow in the gray morning light. He did not ask. What do you need? Turkeys. How many do you have? Frozen? A dozen, maybe 14. Left over from the town order. I will take all of them. And potatoes. Do you have potatoes? I have a root cellar full of them. Russets. I need 90 pounds. And 30 loaves of bread. Whatever you have. That is a lot of food, lady. It is a lot of snow. He stared at me for a long, hard second, then nodded. Back your truck up to the cellar. I paid him in cash. A thick roll of hundreds from the emergency fund I always kept. He helped me load the SUV until the shocks groaned. 12 massive, frozen turkeys, each one a 20-pound cannonball. 2 heavy burlap sacks of potatoes. 35 dense, round loaves of sourdough bread from his wife's bakery. As I was pulling out, headlights appeared, cutting through the snow. A large, white, windowless van with a Stepmother's catering logo peeling off the side slid to a stop. Beck, skinny and pale and vibrating with energy, jumped out of the driver's side. Arlo unfolded himself from the passenger seat, his laptop bag already slung over his shoulder. Sierra was right behind him, carrying a massive box of power strips. Weather was hell, Arlo announced, pulling his collar tight. Sierra routed us through a back road that I am pretty sure was just a frozen river. Beck has not slept in 30 hours. The van has ovens, Beck said, his eyes wild. Convection, and a proofer, and Mom's giant Dutch ovens, 20 of them, cast iron. And I, Sierra said, dropping the box, brought portable exhaust fans, a full mesh network kit, and a high-volume Bluetooth speaker. Where is the fire? Boss? In the kitchen, I said, the relief so strong it almost buckled my knees. Let us go. We formed a convoy, my loaded SUV and the white catering van, and plowed our way back up to the lodge. Just as we parked, a massive Red County plow truck roared up the drive, its yellow lights flashing, clearing the path behind us. Fire Chief Cole stepped out, a tall man in a heavy turnout coat. He looked at me, at my face, at the catering van, at the lodge. He just shook his head. You, he said, are a special kind of problem. Let us go see these gas lines. While Cole and I walked the kitchen, a space so large you could park a bus in it, the team began to unload. It was a montage of controlled chaos. Tables, I yelled. Sierra, Arlo, get the tables, unchain them. The sound of metal chains rattling and the deep, heavy scrape of wood on stone filled the hall. They set them up end to end, creating one impossibly long table that snaked through the entire hall. Beck was already in the kitchen, his team's true element. Boss, the main walk-in is dead, but the freezers are solid. I am firing the convection ovens to thaw the birds. We need prep stations, now. Chief Cole finished his inspection, twisting valves, checking seals with a small tool. It is old, but it is solid, he said, wiping his hands on a rag. The main hood vent is clear. You are green to light. What? What happened to your face? I met his gaze. I ran into a door. He looked at me, the pity and anger in his eyes so clear it startled me. That must have been one hell of a door, he said quietly. My sister had one just like it. Be safe, Miss Donovan. Call 911 if you need anything at all. Thank you, Chief. He left, and his plow truck began running slow. Steady laps up and down the access road. He was keeping our lifeline open. The team was a blur. Sierra had a whiteboard. Zones, she wrote. Receiving. She drew a box. All coats, boots, here. We keep the hall clean. Prep, another box. Beck, you are prep king. All food stays in the kitchen. Allergy, a third. Red box. Arlo, you are allergy. Nothing leaves the line without your check. Arlo was already setting up the tech. He had a laptop at the entryway, on a small podium. This is the check-in, he said. No, Arlo, no check-in. What? Ray, we need data. We need to know who— No, we do not. No one signs in. No one gives a name. No one answers a single question about where they came from or why they are here. The only thing we ask is what they cannot eat. This is anonymous. This is safe. He looked at me, understood, and deleted the spreadsheet he was making. He replaced it with a simple text document. Allergies? Got it. I went to the car and pulled out a package I had picked up at a craft store on the drive. It was a pre-routed piece of pine. I had a marker. I wrote on it, my hand sure and steady, for the one who felt unseen. I took the sign into the great hall. The fireplace was stone, dark, and cold. Beside it, I placed a single, empty chair. Turned toward the room. I hung the sign on the back of it. This was the seat, the one that was always open. The smells began. Beck had found the massive stovetops. The thwack of knives on cutting boards was a rapid drumbeat. The glorious, sharp smell of 100 onions and stalks of celery hitting 2 gallons of melted butter in a pot the size of a tire. The air, which had been cold and damp, began to warm, to sweeten. The scent of sage, of thyme, of browning flour, rolled out of the kitchen, filling the cavernous hall. The aroma was a promise. It was a beacon. Outside, the snow fell harder, a thick, insulating blanket. Inside, the Bluetooth speaker Sierra had mounted on a rafter clicked on. A quiet, acoustic guitar melody filled the space, chasing the last of the shadows from the corners. The kitchen was humming. The prep tables were piled high with chopped vegetables. The turkeys were in the ovens. Beck was making gravy in a cauldron, stirring it with something that looked like a boat oar. I found a piece of butcher paper and a roll of tape. I taped it to the wall by the entrance to the hall, where no one could miss it. I took a thick, black marker. I wrote the only rule this place would ever have. There is no kids' table. There is no auxiliary table. Everyone sits together. Everyone is equal. I stood back, the marker in my hand, my cheek pulsing. The long tables were set. The lights were on. The food was cooking. We were ready. The first to arrive were the ghosts. They came in not as a group, but as solitary shadows detaching themselves from the blizzard. The kitchen was in full, glorious, fragrant operation. The great hall was warm and lit, and the long single table was set. But for the first 20 minutes, there was only the sound of the wind, the acoustic guitar on Sierra's speaker, and our own anxious breathing. Then, the heavy scrape of boots on the slate floor of the entryway. A man appeared, built like the refrigerator I wished I had. He was easily 6.5 feet tall, with a massive beard crystallized with ice. He wore a stained trucker hat and a heavy canvas jacket. He stood in the archway to the great hall, his eyes wide, looking completely lost. He seemed to shrink as he took in the scene. "Pardon me," he rumbled, his voice deep and hesitant. "I saw the plow and the lights. The pastor on the radio said—" "You are in the right place," I said, stepping out from the kitchen, wiping my hands on a towel. My voice sounded too loud in the warm silence. "Welcome. The food is hot. The coffee is fresh. Please, come in. Find a seat anywhere." His eyes scanned the long, empty table. They paused on the single chair by the fire, the one with the sign, for the one who felt unseen. His gaze softened. He seemed to understand that chair, understand its purpose, on a cellular level. He nodded once, a gesture of profound, unspoken gratitude. He walked to the receiving area, hung his heavy coat, and took a seat at the far end of the table, near the fire, facing the room. The spell was broken. The next to arrive were 2 women, both in pale blue hospital scrubs, their parkas unzipped. They looked like they had not slept in a year. Their faces were gray with exhaustion, stamped with the elastic lines from surgical masks. "We just finished a double," the taller one said, her voice a reedy whisper. "At the clinic, we heard a rumor. We did not think it could be true." "It is true," Arlo said, stepping into his self-appointed role as host, his voice gentle. "We have turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, and I need to ask if you have any allergies." The shorter nurse looked at him, and her face just crumpled. She began to cry. Silent. Exhausted tears that tracked through the mask lines on her cheeks. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No allergies. Just, thank you. We are so tired." "We have plenty of food and plenty of quiet," Sierra said, guiding them toward the hot cider station. They were followed by an elderly couple, moving with the slow, synchronized fragility of people who had been holding hands for 50 years. Then a man in a threadbare U.S. Army field jacket who walked with a limp and did not meet anyone's eyes. Within an hour, the trickle had become a stream. The word had gotten out. Pastor Ruthie's phone tree was powerful. The room, which had felt impossibly, cavernously empty, began to feel like a refuge. I had set up a blank sheet of butcher paper near the entryway, next to a few markers, with a simple sign, "What we are thankful for." I did not expect anyone to write anything. It felt a little trite. Then I saw a young mother come in. She was holding her daughter's hand, a little girl of maybe 6 or 7. The mother looked hunted. Her eyes were wide, scanning the room not for food, but for exits, for threats. She was coiled tight, ready to flee. I approached them slowly, as if approaching a deer. "Welcome," I said, keeping my voice low. "Everything here is free. There are no questions. It is just a warm meal. You are safe here." The mother looked at me, her eyes tracing the violent, purple map on my cheek. She did not ask. She just gave a single, jerky nod of understanding. She recognized a fellow refugee. She let go of her daughter's hand and went to get a plate. The little girl, left alone for a moment, toddled over to the thankful board. She picked up a green marker, uncapped it, and stood on her toes. She wrote, in the large, careful, backward-leaning letters of a child just learning to write, "Thank you for remembering my mom." I felt the words land in my chest. It was not about the children. It was not a kids' table issue. It was about the adults who were made to feel small, the mothers, the nurses, the drivers, the ones who were unseen, forgotten, or locked out. I turned away, blinking hard, and went back to the kitchen to get more cider. I moved through the room, my job now to simply serve. I refilled coffee mugs. I carried plates for the elderly couple. I sliced more bread. The folk music from Sierra's speaker was a gentle, acoustic balm, and slowly, the sound of the room began to change. The silence of strangers had been broken by the clinking of silverware. Now, that sound was being overtaken by conversation. Low murmurs at first. The trucker, the man who had been so hesitant, was deep in conversation with the veteran, talking about road conditions on the pass. The nurses were listening intently to the elderly woman. Then, the elderly man, I heard the veteran call him Henry, told a joke. It was a long, shaggy dog story about a penguin and a flat tire. It was, objectively, a terrible joke. His wife groaned. "Oh, Henry, not that one." But the nurse next to him, the one who had been crying, let out a sudden, sharp, bright laugh. It was a sound of pure, surprised joy. That laugh shattered the last of the ice. The room seemed to take a collective breath and relax. The low murmur became a genuine, rolling wave of conversation. People were smiling. The main door swung open again, letting in a swirl of snow and a blast of frigid air. I turned, expecting another family routed by the pastor, or maybe more truckers. My breath caught in my throat. I dropped the coffee pot I was holding. It hit the floor with a dull thud, not breaking. It was Aunt Mara. She stood in the entryway, covered in snow, her face raw and red from the wind. In her arms, she was clutching a foil-wrapped pie tin as if it were a life preserver. "Aunt Mara?" I whispered. The word was dust. It was impossible. She was in Riverton Bluffs. This was Colorado. That was a 12-hour drive. "Ray?" Her voice broke. She saw me. Her eyes locked on my face, on the bruise. The pie tin clattered to the floor. She crossed the entire length of the great hall in 5 furious, crunching steps. She did not stop to hug me. She grabbed my shoulders, her grip fierce, her hands shaking. She stared at my cheek, her eyes tracing the purple and yellow outlines of Sloane's fingers. "Oh, Ray," she breathed. The rage in her eyes was so profound it scared me. It was a mirror of the violence I had suffered. That monster. "How?" I stammered. "How did you get here? The passes." "I called your father's house," she said, her voice low and trembling with fury. "Late last night, after your voicemail, he answered. He told me you sent your regrets, that you were too busy for them this year." She shook her head, tears freezing on her eyelashes. "I drove past. I saw your car. I knew you were in there, sleeping in that cold. And I knew you would not come to me. I knew you would not let me see you weak." She looked around the massive, warm, bustling room. She saw the tables, the food, the sign by the fire. "So I figured, you would go build your own. You always were the builder. I knew about this place. I knew you were closing on it. I just drove. I have been driving since 2 a.m. She finally let go of my shoulders, wiping her face. I brought my pecan pie, your grandmother's recipe, and an apology. Honey, not from them. God, not from them. From me. For every Thanksgiving I sat at that big table and said nothing. For every time I watched them put you in the hallway and I just ate my meal. Mara, you do not have to." "Yes, I do," she said, her voice hard as steel. "I do? Now? Where's the kitchen? This pie needs warming, and I need to meet the wizard who is making this place smell like heaven." She picked up her pie and marched toward the kitchen, a small, unstoppable force of nature, leaving me stunned. Chief Cole returned, this time out of uniform. He wore jeans and a heavy flannel, his hat in his hands. He accepted a mug of cider and just stood by the fire, watching. "You actually did it," he said, shaking his head. "We did it," I corrected. He nodded toward the elderly man. "Henry. He is telling his penguin joke. Must be happy." He raised his voice just enough to be heard. "You know, Henry, we were talking about that storm last year, the one where we found you half frozen in your truck up on the pass." Henry looked up, his eyes bright. "And I told you then, Cole, if you had not shown up, I was going to eat my own boot." The room laughed. "Well," Cole said, raising his mug, "here is to not eating boots." "To not eating boots," the room echoed. A ragged, heartfelt cheer went up. They were not strangers anymore. I saw Sierra in the corner, by the mantel. She had her phone propped up. The lens pointed not at the guests, but at the room, the long table, the fireplace, the food line. It was on, a tiny red light glowing, a live stream. "Sierra, what are you doing?" I said, moving to her, my voice a harsh whisper. "I said this was anonymous." "It is," she whispered back, not taking her eyes off the screen. "It is a private, locked stream, just for the old Harbor Grid investor group. They heard you had gone dark. They were worried." I looked at the screen. The viewer count was climbing. 200, 400. The comment stream was a waterfall. "This is what she's doing? What is that place? It's beautiful. My God. Is that a bruise on her face? This is the real Thanksgiving." My stomach went cold. "Sierra, shut it down. Now." "I think it is too late," Arlo said, appearing at my elbow. "Someone must have copied the invite link. It is starting to get passed around." Before I could absorb the implications of that, a new person approached me. She was young, professional, and holding a notepad and a serious-looking camera. "Ms. Donovan? Ray Donovan?" I tensed. "Who are you?" "I am Sarah, from the Valley Signal, the local paper, Pastor Ruthie. She is one of our community stringers. She called me. She said a miracle was happening up here. This is incredible." Her eyes dropped, just for a second, to my cheek. She had the decency to look away quickly. May I take a few photographs? For the local wire? Just to show what this community is doing in the storm? This was it, the trap. The moment where this private act of defiance became a public statement. My instinct, the one that had kept me safe for 32 years, screamed, "Hide. Hide your face. Hide the story." But the image of Sloane's smirk filled my mind. Just the delivery. I straightened my back. "Yes," I said. My voice was hoarse. "You may, but you follow my rules." "Absolutely," she said, visibly relieved. "Rule 1, I said, pointing. "You do not take pictures of our guests' faces. Not a single one. This is a safe place. That is not negotiable. You can take pictures of the hall, the table, the food, the backs of heads. That is it." "Understood," she said, nodding, already adjusting her lens. "Rule 2, you can take my picture, but the story is not about me. It is not about this." I touched my cheek, the skin numb. "The story is about the open table. That is the only quote you get from me. This is the open table? Got it?" "The open table," she repeated, writing it down. "I love it. Thank you." She began to move through the room, respectfully, quietly, her shutter clicking. The front door opened again. It was the veteran, Tom, the one with the limp. He had left and returned, and he brought friends, 3 other men, all in similar, worn-out jackets. We figured," Tom said, his voice shy, "that this party could use a little more music. The guitar is nice, but..." He and his friends reached into their coat pockets. They pulled out 4 harmonicas. They stood by the fireplace, tapped the moisture from the reeds, and looked at each other. Tom stamped his foot, counting them in. 1, 2, 3. They burst into music. It was not a sad, mournful blues. It was a bright, stomping, bluegrass reel, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. Someone clapped, someone else. The entire room, 150 people, began clapping in time. A single, powerful, rhythmic pulse. Beck burst out of the kitchen, his apron covered in flour and gravy, a massive grin on his face. He yelled over the music, "Ray, boss, I just did a plate count. We are over 200. We have served over 200 meals." I looked across the room. Every seat was full. People were sitting on the stairs. They were sharing chairs. They were standing by the walls, eating, clapping, and smiling. Aunt Mara was pouring her pecan pie. Chief Cole was laughing. The reporter, Sarah, was capturing it all. Her camera flashing, the candlelight, which we had lit as the sun went down, reflected on the polished wood of the long, single table. It was not a river of tears. It was a river of light, a river of warmth, and it was flowing through the heart of the storm. The harmonica music was at a joyful crescendo. The room was a sea of clapping hands and smiling faces. I was standing near the back, by the empty chair, watching Aunt Mara argue with Beck about the correct amount of bourbon in a pecan pie. It was the first time I had felt something close to peace in 48 hours. My phone, tucked deep in my jeans pocket, vibrated. It was not a text. It was the low, insistent buzz of a new email. My heart stopped. I mouthed, "Excuse me," to Aunt Mara, and slipped away from the warmth, my boots silent on the stone floor. I retreated down a dark, cold hallway I had not explored yet. I found what must have been the old lodge manager's office. It was tiny, freezing, and smelled of stale cigar smoke and dead files. I shut the door, plunging myself into darkness, and turned on my phone's screen. The light illuminated my bruised face, a grotesque mask in the small space. The email was from Tech Support, Artemis Secures.com. The subject line, Urgent Security Incident, Video Retrieval. My father's address, Case 8892B. My fingers were numb, and not from the cold. I could not seem to open it. I fumbled twice before the message loaded. Ms. Donovan, we received your initial query via doorbell view and your follow-up regarding the local installer. Riverton Home Solutions. Due to the sensitive nature of your claim, physical assault. We have cross-referenced the account holder, Robert Donovan, with our installer's service logs. A technician was at the property 3 months ago for a requested upgrade. Per the work order, the cloud storage feature was scheduled to be disabled at the account holder's request. However, the technician failed to finalize the storage disable command in the system. The setting remained active. This was our error. As this is a documented failure on our part, and your claim involves a potential felony, we are ethically bound to provide the footage. We have isolated the file from the indicated time block. The account holder has not been notified of this action. You will find a secure, one-time download link below. It will expire in 10 minutes. Regards, Artemis Secure, Tier 2 support. My technician had forgotten. Sloane's order to erase me, to make the camera as blind as my father, had failed because of a single human error. I clicked the link. A progress bar appeared. The file was large. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The weak signal was struggling. Come on, come on. Finally, download complete. 1 file, video, MP4. Added. I pressed play. There was no sound at first, just the silent, wide-angle view of the front porch, grainy in the twilight. The timestamp in the corner read, Nov 23, 4:58 p.m. I watched myself walk up the path, holding the flowers and the jar. I saw myself knock. The door opened. Sloane, her face, her fake smile, perfectly clear. The camera's high-fidelity microphone clicked on. The audio was shockingly crisp. Every word was audible over the sound of the wind. Sloane, you are late. You know how I feel about disturbing the kitchen schedule. My own voice. The text from Dad said to come later. Sloane, he was trying to be polite. You failed to RSVP. I watched the lie, the one I had lived with for years, play out in digital clarity. Then, the man's voice from inside. Sloane, who is it? And Sloane's reply, her voice lilting, musical, and utterly damning. Sloane, it is just the delivery. Darling, be right there. I watched myself stiffen. I watched myself push past her. I am not a delivery. I watched her hand snake out, her fingers digging into my arm. How dare you force your way into my home? I saw my father appear. I saw his eyes. I watched him, in perfect high definition. Look at the floor. Now is not the time. Ray, do not do this. I watched the jar fall. The sound of the glass shattering was a gunshot. I watched Sloane's face, her mask of civility dissolving into pure reptilian hatred. Sloane, you filthy little bitch. And I watched her hand swing. The sound, the crack of her palm connecting with my face, my head snapping back, my body slamming into the pillar. It was all there. I watched myself, a stunned, beaten animal, staring in disbelief. I saw the neighbor's blinds snap shut across the street. I saw the door slam. I heard the deadbolt thunk into place. The timestamp read 5:03 p.m., 5 minutes. It had taken only 5 minutes to erase me. The video file ended. I stood in the dark. Cold office, my entire body shaking so violently I had to lean against a filing cabinet. It was done. It was real. I was not crazy. I had not exaggerated. I had the truth, time-stamped and undeniable. Just as I saved the file to my secure cloud, my phone vibrated again, a flood of notifications, a text from Sierra. Ray, where are you? We have a problem. A text from Arlo. Boss, get out here, now. And a dozen alerts from news apps. A link, shared by the Valley Signal reporter. The article she had written was live. Valley Signal. In the heart of the storm, an open table welcomes all at Red Willow Basin. The headline was innocuous, but the feature photo, the one she had promised not to, it was of me. She had kept her word. Mostly, it was a profile shot, my face turned away from the camera. Looking out over the long table, my good side, my unbruised side, but just visible, catching the light from the fire, was the curve of the swelling, the faint, dark shadow of a bruise that crept up toward my eye. It was subtle, artistic, even. The story itself was a glowing piece about community resilience, about the anonymous angel who had opened a refuge, quoting only my line about the open table. But the comments were not about the table. Sierra's private stream must have leaked. Wait, I saw her on that live stream. Look at her face. That is not just a shadow. That is a black eye. Who is she? Is she in trouble? I know that woman. That's Ray Donovan. From Riverton Bluffs. Her father is Robert Donovan. The blood drained from my face. My anonymity was gone. The story was out. A heavy crashing boom echoed from the great hall. It was the sound of the massive oak front doors being thrown open, slamming against the stone walls. The harmonica music stopped, cut off in a squawk of dissonance. The murmur of the crowd died, replaced by a sudden, shocked, absolute silence. I heard a new voice in the hall, a voice I would know in my sleep, a voice I had heard just moments before, on video, spitting poison. "Where is she?" Sloane shrieked. "Where is Ray?" I stepped out of the dark office, my phone heavy in my hand. The scene in the great hall was a frozen tableau. Every guest, every volunteer, was staring at the entryway. There they stood, framed by the swirling snow. Sloane and my father. They looked like they had been dragged through hell. Sloane's perfect cashmere dress from the night before was rumpled, her hair a mess. My father was in a wrinkled dress shirt, no tie, his face pale and slack with shock. They had clearly driven here in a blind panic, straight from Riverton Bluffs, fueled by the viral article. Sloane saw me, her eyes, red-rimmed and furious, locked on mine. "There you are," she hissed, stalking into the room. The crowd parted for her as if she were toxic. "You did this. You planned this entire, pathetic little circus." My father stumbled in behind her. "Ray," he pleaded, his voice thin. "Ray, what is this? The news. People are saying we—" "Shut up, Robert," Sloane snapped. Not taking her eyes off me, she waved her phone in the air. The Valley Signal article was on her screen. "You think this is clever? You run away. You hide in the mountains. You stage this charity, all to humiliate us. You leak some story about your hard life to make us look like monsters, after we welcomed you?" The hypocrisy was so profound, so complete, it was almost sublime. She was going to play the victim. Here, now, the crowd was silent, watching us, the nurses, the trucker, the veteran, Aunt Mara, Chief Cole, my new family. "Sloane," I said. My voice was calm. It was frighteningly calm. I felt no rage, only a cold, clean certainty. "You are lying. How dare you call me a liar?" she screamed. "I am your mother. We opened our home to you, and you threw it back in our faces. You broke my grandmother's. She was searching, floundering. "My cranberry sauce," I finished for her. "The jar I made, the one you made me drop, when you shoved me." "I never touched you," she shrieked. "You are unbalanced. You fell. You are clumsy. You have always been clumsy and dramatic." My father was nodding, a puppet on her string. "It is true, Ray. You slipped. It was an accident. Your face. You must have hit the door. It was dark." He was lying, to my face. In front of 100 witnesses, he was choosing to believe the lie, to speak the lie, because the truth was too costly. This was the moment. "Arlo," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. Arlo was already at the tech table. He looked at me, his eyes wide. "The TV," I said. "The big one, on the wall. Patch my phone to it." "Patching. Now," he said. The massive, 80-inch flat screen, left over from the ski lodge's glory days, flickered to life. The Valley Signal article that was on the screen vanished, replaced by my phone's home screen. Sloane's tirade stopped. She looked confused. What? What is this? You said you never touched me, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the silent hall. You said I fell. You said it was an accident. I opened my video files. I tapped video, MP4. The thing about modern security, I said, as the file loaded, is that it does not blink. It does not look away. It does not get scared. It just records. I pressed play. The video, my 5-minute trial, filled the screen, the porch, the knock, the clear, crisp audio. Sloane. It is just the delivery. Darling. A collective, sharp intake of breath from the crowd, the shove. My father. Do not do this. The shatter of glass. Sloane's voice, now amplified by Sierra's speakers, a demonic hiss that filled the entire hall. Sloane. You, filthy, little, bitch, and the strike. The crack of the slap was so loud on the speakers that several people flinched. The image of my head snapping back, of my body hitting the pillar, was broadcast in brutal, undeniable high definition. The video showed the door slamming shut, the deadbolt sliding home. Then it just showed the empty porch, the snow falling, for 30 seconds. Then it ended. The screen went black. The silence in the hall was not silence. It was a vacuum. It was the sound of 150 people holding their breath, their entire worldview shifting. My father's face was white. He looked like he was going to vomit. Sloane was frozen, her mouth open, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated disbelief. She had been caught. The truth, her greatest enemy, was on a screen for the world to see. The silence was broken by a single sound. In the back of the room, the veteran, Tom, the one with the harmonica, began to clap. It was not loud. It was a slow, measured, deliberate clap, 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 clap. Then the trucker joined in. Then one of the nurses. It was not applause. It was a verdict. It was the sound of the jury returning. But, my father stammered, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an ally. The camera. It was off. I did not see. A voice, sharp and cold as ice, cut him off. You did not see because you had your eyes closed. Robert. Aunt Mara stepped out from the crowd. She was shaking with a rage that was almost holy. You have always had your eyes closed. You let this viper, do this to your own child, my sister's child, and you sang. That one word hit him harder than the video. He visibly crumpled. Sloane, however, was a cornered animal. Her shock turned to rage. You faked that. It is a deep fake. You did this. You, witch. She lunged, not at me, at the tech table, at Arlo. She was going for the remote, for the laptop. I will destroy that, she screamed, her nails out like claws. She never made it. A large, solid body stepped directly in her path. Fire Chief Cole, his arms crossed, blocked her way. He did not touch her. He just stood there, an immovable object. Ma'am, he said, his voice calm, but with an edge of steel that cut through her hysteria. I would advise you to stop. You are in a room full of witnesses, and what I saw on that screen was felony assault. To follow it up by lunging at a bystander, that is a very, very bad idea. Sloane froze, her hand in the air. The legal, adult consequences, the ones that did not apply in her own home, had finally entered the room. I looked past her, at my father. He was weeping, his hands over his face. I am filing the application for an order of protection, I said, my voice steady. I am submitting this video, and the photographs, and the voicemail from Aunt Mara, to the court. Sloane's head snapped toward me. You will not. You want money. Is that it? You want to sue us? I almost laughed. Money? I do not want your money. I have my own. I do not want compensation. I do not want an apology. I just want the truth. I want it on the record, and I want you to stay away from me." My father looked up, his face a ruin. "Ray, please, your family." "This," I said, gesturing to the room, to the people, to the long, warm table, "is my family. These are the people who showed up." A hand touched my arm. It was Tom, the veteran. He was holding up a mug of cider. His hand was shaking, but his eyes were clear. "Mademoiselle," he said, his voice thick. "I spent 10 years trying to tell them what happened to me. They never believed me either." He raised his mug. "To all the ones who were never believed, until they were—" The room, as one, raised their glasses. "To the ones who were never believed," they echoed. It was a toast. It was a promise. Sloane just stood there, flanked by Chief Cole, trapped in the light of the truth. She had nowhere left to run. Sloane's face was a mask of chalky, baffled rage. She was still trapped in the moment of the video, exposed and humiliated. But as the toast, "To the ones who were never believed," echoed in the hall, the shock in her eyes began to curdle, hardening into something else. It was the desperate, calculating look of an animal that had just chewed off one leg to escape a trap and was cornered again. She let out a sound. It was not a word. It was a dry, rasping bark that was almost a laugh. "Money," she spat, the words slicing through the silence. "Of course, that is what this is." She turned, her movements stiff and jerky, to address the crowd, her audience. "You all see this? This performance? This pathetic stage play? With the cold food and the strays?" She gestured to the guests, her hand waving dismissively. "This is a shakedown. This is a temper tantrum because she was written out of the will." My father flinched, looking at her in horror. "Sloane, do not—" "Oh, yes, Robert," she snapped, whirling on him. "She wants to play this game? Let us play. She thinks this doctored video, this lie, is going to get her a payday? Well, I have news for you. Ray." She locked her gaze on me, her eyes glittering with renewed venom. "It is over. Your father finalized it last month. You are out, disinherited, for your ingratitude, for your failure to maintain a family relationship. You get nothing, not 1 cent. This entire elaborate show, it gets you nothing." She crossed her arms, triumphant. She had delivered her kill shot. She had redefined the narrative. This was not a victim seeking justice. This was a spurned daughter seeking revenge. The crowd murmured. She had planted the seed of doubt. I smiled. It was a small, cold, tired smile. It did not reach my bruised eye. "You are still talking about money, Sloane," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried in the vast, warm room. "You are still talking about your money, my father's money, as if it is the only weapon you have, as if it is the only thing I could possibly want." I took a step toward her. Chief Cole tensed, but I ignored him. "Let me be very, very clear. I do not want your money. I do not need your money. 3 months ago, I finalized the sale of my majority stake in Harbor Grid, the 60% I held. I saw my father's head snap up. He had not known. He still thought I ran a little computer business. The initial proceeds from that sale," I continued, "have already been moved into a charitable trust, a fund that I, alone, control. To put it in terms you might understand, Sloane, the interest that fund generated last month could buy your house, and the land it sits on, and the bank that holds your adjustable rate mortgage. I am not here for the inheritance. I am here for the truth." The color drained from her face. This was a variable she had not calculated. I was not the poor, cast-off child. I was an independent, hostile power. "But you are right about one thing," I said. "I am here for an inheritance, just not the one you are thinking of." I walked over to the coat room, where my bag was stashed. The entire hall watched me. I unzipped the side pocket and pulled out a single, folded, tri-panel legal document. I walked back to the center of the room. "I am not here for the Donovan estate. I said, my voice ringing with a clarity that felt new. I am here for the Matheson legacy, my mother's legacy. Aunt Mara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My mother, I said, looking at my father, left me something you both conveniently forgot to give me when I turned 25, as stipulated in her personal effects. I unfolded the document. It is a power of attorney and executorship, legally filed and notarized, giving me sole signatory control over a property held in her family's trust, a property you have been paying the taxes on, assuming it was just another piece of land, Boulder Crest Orchard. My father's face went white. He knew the name. That barren rock? Sloane stammered, trying to regain her footing. It is worthless. It is 150 acres of dead trees and rocks. It has not produced a thing in 30 years. It is not worthless, I said. It is the last piece of my mother, and you are right. It is dormant, which is why I am activating it. It is going to be the permanent home for the Open Table Project. My mother always wanted to build a community kitchen there. You just gave me the motivation to finally execute her will. You cannot, my father whispered. That land is tied up in the estate. No, it is not, I said, holding up the document. It is tied up in the Matheson Trust, which predates your marriage, and I am the executor. It is mine, legally, and I am taking it. She always wanted that, Aunt Mara whispered, tears streaming down her face. She told me. She wanted a place for the valley, a place to feed people. She looked at my father. And you let it rot. Sloane saw him crumbling. She saw her power, her control over the family narrative, dissolving. It does not matter, she shrieked. You cannot prove anything. That land is worthless. You have nothing. Is it as worthless as your credit, Sloane? My voice was a razor. The question hung in the air, sharp and deadly. My father looked at Sloane, confused. What is she talking about? Sloane's face was no longer angry. It was, for the first time, terrified. She knew. I am an engineer. Sloane, I said softly. I build systems. I analyze risk. It is what I do. Did you really think I would come into this fight without running the data? Without checking the public records? I did not have to look at a paper. I had memorized it. The house in Riverton Bluffs, the one you are so proud of, the one you locked me out of. You took out a second mortgage on it 2 years ago, a massive one, not a fixed rate, an adjustable rate mortgage. It is set to reset on January 1st, in just over 4 weeks. Given the prime rate hike, your payments are about to triple, at least. My father's face was a mask of disbelief. Sloane? Is that true? You told me we refinanced at a fixed... Shut up, Robert, she hissed, but the panic was in her eyes. He did not know, I said, realization dawning. Of course he did not. You have been hiding your debts, selling off his assets to cover your own, the boat, the stocks. It was not a portfolio diversification, it was a liquidation. I took another step. And then there is the bank, Riverton First National, a small community bank. They do not like risk, and they especially do not like scandal. I read the fine print on your loan agreement, your high-risk, variable-rate loan. Section 4B, the Morals Clause. A standard clause in agreements of this nature, it states the loan can be called in full, due in 30 days, if the borrower engages in any action which brings the borrower and, by extension, the institution, into public disrepute or scandal. I let that hang in the air. Now, what do you think a viral video of a felony assault, filed with a court and distributed to the state beacon, will do to that clause? You assaulted me. The camera caught you, and I caught you. Checkmate. Sloane was breathing in short, shallow gasps. My father was leaning on a table, his knuckles white. The entire room was silent, watching this strategic execution. But I am not you, I said, my voice softening, but losing none of its steel. I am not here to destroy a family. I am here to protect myself. And I am here to honor my mother. So I'm going to give you one way out. One, There is no negotiation. I looked at them both. My father's shame. Sloane's terror. You will leave here, now. You will drive back to Riverton Bluffs. Tonight, before the 10 o'clock news. You will go to the town hall, or the church, and you, Sloane, and you, Robert, will make a full, public, and unreserved apology, not to me, to the community, for your lies, for your behavior, for violating the very idea of hospitality and community that this town pretends to live by. You will tell them you lied about me. You will tell them you turned me away. You will not mention the assault. You will just say you were wrong. I paused, letting the terms sink in. You do that, and I will not file the restraining order. I will not send this video to the state papers. I will not mention your names to a single reporter. This story will die. It will remain about the open table in Colorado. You will be humiliated, yes, but you will be able to recover. You might even save your loan. I will get what I want. The truth, on the record, from your own mouths, and you will get to salvage what is left. My father looked at the floor. He looked at the faces in the crowd. He saw Chief Cole, his arms still crossed, his face a mask of cold judgment. He saw Pastor Ruthie, who had just arrived, her face a portrait of profound disappointment. He saw the nurses, the trucker, the veterans. He saw his world, his reputation, his entire social standing, resting on my word. He had no allies here. Sloane, however, was made of something else, something brittle and proud. She looked at me, her face contorted. "No," she whispered. "Sloane," my father pleaded. "No," she screamed, her voice cracking. I will not be humiliated by her. I will fight this. I will say you doctored it. I will say you bribed that technician. I will sue you for libel. I will destroy you." She had made her choice. "Fine," I said. I pulled out my phone. The hall watched as I opened my email. I tapped the icon to compose a new message. I addressed it to my personal attorney. I attached one file. Video, MP4. I wrote the subject line, Donovan V. Donovan, file restraining order immediately. I held my thumb over the send button. She made her choice. "Dad," I said, looking at my father. "Now you make yours. Are you going with her? Is this the hill you die on? Her pride?" My father was shaking, caught between two opposing, crushing forces. Aunt Mara stepped forward, her face etched with a lifetime of held-back words. She put her hand on my father's arm. Her grip was like a vice. "Robert," she said, her voice shaking with a cold, clear fury. "Listen to me. This is it. This is your last chance. Your last, final chance on this earth to do the right thing, to be the man my sister married, not the weak, hollow shell she turned you into. Choose, your daughter, or her, for the last time." My father looked at Sloane, her face twisted in a mask of pure, vindictive hatred. Then he looked at me, my face, bruised and swollen by her hand, but my eyes, clear and steady. The fight went out of him. It was a physical thing, a deflation of the soul. "Please," he whispered, the word ragged, broken. He was not talking to Sloane. He was talking to me. "Please, Ray, do not send it. Please, give me 24 hours. Just one day. I will fix this. I will make the statement. I will do it, with or without her." Sloane's head snapped toward him, her eyes wide with betrayal. "Robert." He ignored her. His eyes were locked on mine, pleading. 24 hours. Ray, just, please." I looked at him, this broken, cowardly man. My father. I looked at my thumb, hovering over the blue send icon. I looked at the draft of the restraining order, the submit button glowing on the court's website. "One day," I said. 24 hours. He nodded, grasping, hope flooding his features. Yes, thank you." "I am not finished," I interrupted. 24 hours. You will make that public statement. You will apologize to the community for your inhospitable behavior and false statements regarding your daughter. And tomorrow morning, you will be at your lawyer's office. You will sign over Boulder Crest Orchard, free and clear, to the new Open Seat Fund. No resistance, no delays. It will be an unconditional transfer. Yes, he whispered. A broken, defeated sound. Yes, anything. I will be waiting, I said. I will have people in Riverton Bluffs watching. I will know if you are lying, and if you fail, if you hesitate, if you try to change one word. I push this button, and I will not stop. He nodded again, closing his eyes. Now get out, I said, my voice flat, dead. Both of you, this is not your table. My father turned, a man suddenly aged 30 years. He walked toward the door. Sloane did not move. She was staring at me, her entire body vibrating. Robert, she screamed at his retreating back. Robert, you cannot do this. He did not stop. He pushed open the door and stumbled out into the snow. Sloane stood there, alone, her power, her money, her husband, all gone in an instant. She looked at me, and if a look could kill, I would have been ash. Then she turned, her back rigid, and followed him out into the storm. The door closed. The room was silent. I looked at my phone. The email draft was still there. I did not delete it. I just put the phone back in my pocket. The 24-hour deadline felt like 1,000 years and no time at all. I drove back to Riverton Bluffs, leaving the sanctuary of Red Willow Basin behind. I left Aunt Mara in charge, a newly crowned queen of the cast iron pots, with Arlo, Sierra, and Beck as her royal guard. The drive was a blur of caffeine, adrenaline, and the throbbing, purple-yellow map of my humiliation. I did not sleep. I simply moved. A projectile aimed at a target. I arrived in Riverton Bluffs just after 10 in the morning. My father had been efficient. Fear, it seems, is a remarkable motivator. The town square was a place I had actively avoided, a postcard-perfect green space surrounded by brick and ivy storefronts, the heart of the community I had never been allowed to join. Today, it was a stage. In the frigid post-blizzard air, long wooden tables, borrowed from the church fellowship hall, were being set up. Volunteers from the Riverton Bluffs Fire Department, men who had known me my entire life and looked away, were pouring coffee from large urns. Pastor Ruthie's counterpart, a stern-looking man named Pastor Davies, was directing the setup. They were calling it the Riverton Community Reconciliation Luncheon. The name was so clinical, so sterile. It could only have been drafted by a lawyer. I parked my SUV and unstrapped the chair from the roof rack. The chair, for the one who felt unseen. I had brought it with me. It was my witness. I carried it, my arms aching, through the gathering crowd. People were filtering in from the shops, from their homes. They were curious. They had seen the Valley Signal article, which had been shared and reshared until it had saturated our local network. They had heard the whispers. They had seen my father's frantic, early morning calls to the town council. They knew something was happening. I saw the neighbor who had closed his blinds. He was here, standing near the back, his face a mask of nervous curiosity. I placed the empty chair directly in front of the small wooden podium, facing the crowd, a seat for the invisible, a silent, wooden accusation. A murmur went through the crowd as they saw it. They saw the carved letters. They saw me, my face in the full, harsh light of day, the bruise now a sickening, undeniable galaxy of purple, green, and black. There was no hiding it. There were gasps. I was the physical evidence. My father was standing by the podium, his hands clasped behind his back, his face gray. He looked ill. Sloane was beside him, but she was not the Sloane of my father's house. She was flanked by a man in a severe dark suit, his briefcase resting on the ground. Her lawyer. Her eyes were hidden behind large, dark sunglasses, a bizarre affectation in the gray winter light. She was a statue of pure, unadulterated loathing. The town's fire chief, a man I did not know, stepped up to the podium. He cleared his throat. "We are, gathered here today at the request of the Donovan family and Pastor Davies to, find community and, to hear a statement. Robert, if you would." He stepped aside. My father walked to the podium. It was the longest walk of his life. He unfolded a single sheet of paper. His hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled, the sound obscenely loud in the quiet square. He stared at it. He could not speak. "Robert," Sloane's lawyer hissed, a stage whisper that everyone heard. My father flinched. He looked up, his eyes sweeping over the crowd. He saw me. He saw the chair. He looked back at his paper, and then he did something I did not expect. He folded the paper, his hands trembling, and put it back in his pocket. "What I have to say," he began, his voice a raw, broken rasp, it is not on that paper. That paper is what the lawyers wanted me to say." Sloane's lawyer took a sharp step forward, but my father raised a hand, a weak, halting gesture. "No, I have to." He took a deep, shuddering breath. "I failed," he said, the words torn from him. I have lived in this town my whole life. You all know me. You knew my first wife. You know my daughter. Ray." He looked at me. I failed her, as a father, as a man. The crowd was utterly silent. This was not the bloodless legal statement they had been promised. This was a confession. There have been stories, rumors, about Thanksgiving. He was choking on the words. I allowed my home to be inhospitable. I allowed false statements to be made about my daughter. I did not protect her. He looked down at his shaking hands on the podium. "She is an adult, a grown woman, but she is my daughter, and I failed to protect her from harm. I was a coward, and I am sorry. Ray, I am sorry, and to this community, for the lies I allowed. I am sorry." He stepped back, a broken, hollowed-out man. He had not named Sloane. He had not named the violence. He had said harm. He had said inhospitable. He had kept to the letter of our bargain, but just barely. Sloane's lawyer immediately stepped up, a shark sensing blood. "Thank you. Robert, as you can see, this has been a deeply painful, private family misunderstanding, a simple holiday disagreement that was, unfortunately, escalated and taken out of context by outside parties. The Donovans are healing, and they ask for privacy at this time. There will be no further comment." He put a proprietary hand on Sloane's back, ready to guide her away. Misunderstanding. The word was a slap, a second assault. It was designed to erase everything. Sloane, for her part, refused to speak. She just stood there, hidden behind her sunglasses, a monument to her own unbending pride. The lawyer nodded at the crowd, as if dismissing them. "Thank you for coming." But I was not finished. I walked from the front row, past the empty chair, and stood at the podium. The lawyer looked startled. My father looked terrified. I did not look at them. I looked at the crowd. I looked at the faces I had known my entire life. "My name is Ray Donovan," I said, my voice clear and steady. The microphone picked it up, carrying it across the square. "We are not here because of a misunderstanding. We are here because of a choice, the choice to make someone invisible." I put my hand on the back of the empty chair. For years, I was asked to sit at the auxiliary table, in the hallway, on the porch. I was asked to make myself small, to be unseen, so that others could be comfortable. A lot of people in this world are asked to do the same. "This chair," I said, my voice growing stronger, "is for them. It is for the one who was told they were not important enough for the main table. It is for the one who was called delivery when they were, in fact, daughter. It is for the one who was left in the cold." The crowd was with me. I could feel the shift. This was not a family squabble. This was a parable. Last night, I continued. I was locked out. The night before, I slept in my car. But I was not alone, because in another town, in another state, a group of strangers came together in a storm. They came to a place I was building, a place called the Open Table. As I said the words, a large television screen, set up by the fire department for community announcements, flickered to life behind me. Arlo and Sierra had come through. A new face appeared on the screen. It was the nurse, the one from the Red Willow Clinic, her face still tired, but smiling from her own living room. "My name is Sarah Jane," she said. Her voice piped through the speakers. I was at the Open Table. I had just finished a 36-hour triple shift at the clinic. I was empty. I had nothing left. And that meal, that room, it was not just food. It was seeing that someone had remembered us, the people holding things together. It saved my spirit. It truly did. The crowd in Riverton Bluffs murmured. This was real. This was not a staged circus. The screen changed. Now it was Fire Chief Cole, standing in the Great Hall of Red Willow Basin. "Chief Cole here, Red Willow County," he said, his voice full of authority. I inspected Ms. Donovan's facility personally. It is a Class A commercial kitchen, and it is a fortress, because of her actions, because she opened her doors when everyone else was closing them. Red Willow County is formally designating the basin as our primary community storm shelter and emergency food bank for the entire region. What she built, it is going to save lives. The validation was complete. It was public. It was official. I had not just built a table, I had built a shelter. The State Beacon reporter, the big-time paper that had picked up the story from the Valley Signal, was there. I saw her furiously scribbling. Her story, I knew, would be devastating. The headline was already writing itself. When one chair made a whole town look again. I stepped back from the podium. I looked at the crowd. My father was right about one thing, I said. I am his daughter, but I am also my mother's daughter, and my mother's legacy, Boulder Crest Orchard, will be permanently joined with the new Open Seat Fund. From now on, anyone in this valley, or any valley, who feels unseen, you have a seat at our table. I set up a small, simple sign by the podium with a QR code Arlo had made. The Open Seat Fund. Every seat is equal. I did not ask for money, but as I walked away from the podium, I saw the neighbor, the one who had closed his blinds, walk up, his face pale, and scan the code with his phone. Then another person, and another. The fund, which I had seated myself, began to grow, donation by donation, right there in the town square. It was a wave of small, silent apologies. Sloan had seen enough. Her lawyer, recognizing a total, catastrophic loss, grabbed her arm. "We are leaving." She did not resist. She stood rigid, her sunglasses still in place. As he pulled her through the crowd, people did not move out of her way. They made her walk around them. The whispers were audible. Called her a delivery. Felony assault. I heard? His own daughter. That poor girl. That bruise. She did not look at anyone. She got into a black car with her lawyer and sped away, leaving my father standing alone by the podium. The civil suit, the one I had not filed, would simmer. The threat of the video was now a permanent cloud over her head, tied to her morals clause, a leash I would hold forever. She was not disarmed, but she was contained. The town square emptied, leaving only the cold, the stacked tables, and my father, who stood alone by the podium, a ghost at his own execution. I did not speak to him again. I got in my car and drove to Aunt Mara's house. It was the only place in Riverton Bluffs that had ever felt like home. I was sitting at her small kitchen table, nursing a cup of black tea, when my phone buzzed. The adrenaline from the confrontation had drained away, leaving a hollow, vibrating exhaustion. My cheek ached, my body ached. It was an email from a secure anonymous address, a Proton Mail account. The subject line read, "Proof of intent." My fingers were stiff as I opened it. The The message was short, and my blood ran cold. I was the technician from Riverton Home Solutions. I serviced the Donovan account 3 months ago. I was the one who was supposed to disable the cloud storage on your doorbell view. I stopped breathing. The work order was specific. The client, Ms. Sloan Donovan, insisted. She wanted live view only, no cloud storage, no local SD card recording. She said it was a privacy concern. It was an unusual request. I thought it was suspicious. I logged the request, and I got her signature on the work order. But I never executed the final command. I left the cloud storage active. I guess I forgot. I saw the news from the town square. I am attaching my copy of the work order. Note her signature authorizing the storage disable request. I am also attaching my internal service log, where I failed to finalize the command. What you have is not an accident. It is evidence. He was right. It was not just a lucky break. It was a failed conspiracy. Sloan had wanted the camera to be a blind deterrent. She had wanted no witnesses. She had been planning, on some level, to have a version of events that could not be challenged. The video did not just exist. It existed in defiance of her specific, signed request. Before I could even process this, another email arrived. This one was not anonymous. It was from the town's anonymous tip line, forwarded to me. Please, Ray, it read, check the attic, your father's house, under the floorboards, back corner of the linen closet, your mother's things. I showed both messages to Aunt Mara. Her face, which had been soft with relief, hardened into a cold fury. She is still at the house, Mara said, looking out the window. Her lawyer dropped her off. She is probably destroying everything she can. Then we cannot go, I said. You cannot, Mara corrected. She went to a drawer and pulled out a single, old-fashioned brass key. This was your mother's. It opens the side door to the pantry. Sloan never bothered to change that lock. I will not be long. She was gone for less than an hour. I paced the floor, the technician's email burning a hole in my mind. When Mara returned, she was covered in dust and cobwebs. She was not crying. Her anger was too cold for tears. She was carrying a single, metal recipe box, my mother's. It was exactly where the email said, she whispered. Placing it on the table between us, I lifted the lid. It was not recipes, it was letters. Dozens of them, tied in faded blue ribbon, all in my mother's elegant, left-leaning script. To Ray, on her 16th birthday. To Ray, on her graduation. To Ray, on her wedding day. To Ray, when you feel alone. Sloan had found this box. She had read these, and she had buried them. She had not just stolen my seat at the table. She had stolen my mother's voice, my entire inheritance of love. At the very bottom, beneath the letters, was a single folded sheet of stationery. It was not a formal, notarized document. It was a holographic will, a statement of intent, written in my mother's hand, dated 2 weeks before she died. My formal will is with the lawyers, it read. But this is my heart, my land, the Boulder Crest Orchard. It is not for selling, it is for growing. If anything happens to me, Robert, I want you to give this to Ray. I want her to build a kitchen there, a place for the valley, a place where everyone gets a hot meal, a place for the unseen. I closed my eyes. The words were a perfect echo of my own mission. Sloan had not just hidden my mother's love, she had tried to suffocate her legacy. My phone rang, splitting the sacred silence. It was Sarah, the reporter from the Valley Signal. Her voice was tense, journalistic. Ray, I just received an anonymous package, a USB drive, no return address. What is on it? I asked, my voice dead. An audio recording, an MP3 file. It is a phone call. From 2 weeks ago. It is Sloan. There is no question. She is talking to a commercial developer out of Denver. Ray. She was trying to sell Boulder Crest. My knuckles turned white around my phone. She was trying to fast-track a cash sale, way under market value. She needed it to close by January 1st. She told the developer it was a worthless piece of inherited land that she needed to liquidate to cover a personal debt balloon. She was selling your mother's legacy to pay off the mortgage she hid from your father. I did not say anything. I thanked Sarah. I asked her to hold the story for 1 hour. I forwarded the audio file to my father. I forwarded the scanned copy of the technician's invoice. I forwarded the digital photo of my mother's holographic will. I did not write a single word of explanation. I just sent the files, the truth, the data, the evidence. Then I drove to his house. I did not have to knock. The front door was wide open. I heard his voice, a sound I had never heard before. He was not crying. He was roaring. I walked into the entryway, the scene of the original crime. It was chaos. A suitcase was open on the stairs. Clothes were thrown everywhere. My father was standing in the middle of the living room. Sloane was across from him, her face a white mask of fury. In my father's hand was the shattered silver frame of his and Sloane's wedding photograph. You, monster, he was stammering, his voice cracking with a lifetime of suppressed rage. You were selling her land, my wife's land, her dying wish. You hid her letters. You buried her. It was worthless, Sloane shrieked, her voice a raw, ugly tear in the air. It was dead. I was protecting this family. I was protecting you from a ghost. From her. From her. You were protecting your shopping habit, he roared. You were paying your secret debts. You lied to me. He threw the shattered frame. It hit the wall beside her head, exploding in a spray of glass. Sloane did not flinch. She just stared at him. Then her eyes flicked to me. Standing in the doorway, she saw me, the witness. She saw my face. She saw the end. The fight went out of her. Her face became smooth, cold, and composed. Fine, she whispered, her voice like ice. She calmly walked to the staircase, zipped her half-packed suitcase, and picked up her purse. Keep your ghosts, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. Keep your dead wife, and keep your pathetic, damaged daughter. You truly deserve each other. She walked past me, dragging the suitcase. She did not look at me. She walked out the front door, got into her Lexus, and sped away down the street. She was gone. Her retreat, however, was tactical. 2 hours later, her final attack began. A long, eloquent post on her public social media pages. With a broken heart, I have been forced to leave my home, my unstable stepdaughter, Ray Donovan, in a fit of rage after learning she was disinherited, fabricated an elaborate story and doctored a video to extort my husband. She has been unstable for years. She attacked me, and I was forced to defend myself. Please pray for my family. The narrative was set. I was the hysterical, violent, gold-digging daughter. The post was shared 10 times, then 20, her friends, the community she had built, rushed to defend her. I did not argue. I did not engage. I made one, and only one, public post. The truth is not emotional. It is data. Here is the full time-stamped video. Here is the signed work order from Artemis Secure, where Sloane Donovan requested all recording functions be disabled 3 months ago. Here is the technician's signed statement confirming he forgot to honor the request. Here is the audio file of her attempting to illegally sell the very land my mother consecrated to a community kitchen, a kitchen I am now building. The video is real. The malice was intentional. The Open Seat Fund will continue its work. I posted it. I attached the files. I released the data. The digital dam broke. The State Beacon ran the headline, Donovan Scandal. Evidence shows proof of intent and financial fraud in holiday assault. The backlash was not just social, it was financial. The main corporate sponsor for the Riverton Winter Gala, an event Sloane had chaired for 10 years, publicly withdrew its funding. Citing the deeply disturbing reports, her design firm's clients began to cancel contracts. The community did not just turn on her, it erased her. In the middle of this chaotic, digital storm, a single thick envelope arrived at Red Willow Basin, forwarded by Arlo. It was on heavy, cream-colored cardstock, with an embossed seal but no return address. Inside, a single typed sheet. We are a private foundation that values those who build tables rather than walls. We have been impressed by your integrity under duress and your commitment to your mother's legacy. We will match, dollar for dollar, every public donation made to the Open Seat Fund, effective immediately, up to a ceiling of $1 million. I stared at the number. $1 million? My mother's kitchen. It would not just be a shelter, it would be a fortress. That afternoon, my father, now sitting alone in that massive, silent house, filed 2 sets of papers. The first was a formal application for family mediation. The second was an unconditional, irrevocable deed transfer, signing Boulder Crest Orchard, free and clear, to the Open Seat Fund. The final piece landed the next morning. The court, having reviewed my digital filing, the video, the technician's invoice, my mother's will, and Sloane's now deleted but widely screenshotted social media post, did not wait for a full hearing. A judge issued an emergency temporary order of protection. Sloane Donovan was legally barred from contacting me, my father, or Aunt Mara, and from coming within 500 yards of my home, my father's home, or the Boulder Crest property. A full hearing was set for January. After the holidays, the war was over. The truth had won. We called it the candlelight table. It was New Year's Eve, the final night of a long, bruising, and transformative year. The snow was falling again, thick and silent, but the pass to Red Willow Basin was clear. Chief Cole, true to his word, had designated the access road a priority route. The plows ran every 2 hours. Arlo, Sierra, and Beck had spent 3 days preparing. They had taken the 1,000 small, glass oil lamps I had ordered with the first rush of donation money. They had arranged them in the wide, flat meadow in front of the lodge, directly in the sightline of the great hall's windows. As darkness fell, they lit them, one by one. The result was a breathtaking spectacle, a massive, flickering constellation in the snow, a soft, golden fire that outlined the perfect, simple shape of a single chair. It was a beacon. It was an invitation. The great hall was full, not just with the stranded, but with the intentional. The nurses from the clinic were back, this time off duty, their faces relaxed. Tom, the veteran, and his harmonica band were by the fire. Henry and his wife were there, holding hands, dozens of people from Riverton Bluffs. Faces I recognized from the town square had made the 12-hour pilgrimage, led by Aunt Mara, who was now the undisputed, self-appointed queen of the Red Willow kitchen. The bruise on my face had faded to a pale, yellowish shadow, a ghost of the woman I had been a month prior. I stood near the fireplace, my hands shaking, holding the single sheet of my mother's stationery. "Before we eat," I said, my voice quiet, but it carried, and the room fell silent. "I have something I need to read. It was hidden from me for a long time. It is from my mother, the woman who dreamed of this place." I unfolded the letter, her elegant, left-leaning script, as familiar to me as my own face. "To my Ray," I read, my voice thick. "I am writing this because I know you. I know you will feel things deeply. If you ever feel like you do not have a seat at the table, if anyone, ever, makes you feel small or invisible, do not wait for an invitation you will never receive. Do not try to earn a seat that is not worth having. You add a seat for someone else. You build a bigger table." A sob broke from Aunt Mara. I looked up, my eyes blurry. My father was standing at the edge of the crowd. He had come, as I had requested. He looked thinner, older, and terribly frail. He stepped forward, but not to the podium. He walked to a simple wooden table Arlo had set up. On it was a thick stack of legal documents and a pen. "Your mother was right," he said, his voice hoarse, speaking not just to me, but to the entire room. I knew her wish, and I let it be buried. I failed her, and I failed my daughter." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a lifetime of regret. "I cannot fix what I broke with words, An apology is not a foundation. It does not build anything. He picked up the pen, in front of the State Beacon reporter, in front of Chief Cole, in front of the 200 people who had become my family. He began to sign the papers, the final, irrevocable transfer of Boulder Crest Orchard to the Open Seat Fund. He signed the first page, his hand shaking. He signed the second. "This is my apology," he whispered, pushing the stack across the table. "This is my action, not a promise. Her kitchen will be built. This is the only thing I have left to give." He stepped back, a man finally unburdened, though not yet forgiven. As he did, a new sound filled the air. Tom, the veteran, raised his harmonica to his lips. It was not a sad song. It was a slow, hopeful, rising melody. Henry, the elderly man, stood up, raising his mug of cider. His wife stood with him. The nurses, Chief Cole, Aunt Mara, Arlo, Sierra, and Beck, one by one, every person in the great hall rose to their feet. They stood in the warm light, a single, unbroken community. There were no chairs, there was no auxiliary table, there was no main table, there was just us. Chief Cole walked up to me, his formal hat in his hand. He pulled a small, laminated card from his breast pocket. "The county council and the RFD voted last week," he said, his voice gruff, trying to hide his emotion. "For your actions in the November blizzard, for opening a designated county shelter, for providing food and heat to over 200 stranded citizens, at great personal risk. This," he said, pressing the card into my hand, "makes you an honorary member, an official volunteer firefighter. You are one of us now. Ms. Donovan, this valley protects its own." I looked at the card. Ray Donovan, honorary captain. It was the first family ID I had ever been given that truly mattered. Sarah, the reporter from the State Beacon, who had driven up from Denver, raised her camera. She did not ask. She just looked at me, then gestured with her eyes toward the empty chair by the fire, the one with the carving, for the one who felt unseen. I understood. I walked over and I sat down. Just for a moment. I sat in the chair I had built for the ghost of the girl sleeping in her car. Sarah's flash popped. A single, bright, clean explosion of light. The image was captured. The survivor, finally taking her seat. As the flash faded, the great oak doors of the lodge opened again, letting in a swirl of snow. A woman stood there, hesitant, silhouetted against the dark and the 1,000 burning lamps. She was thin. Her coat was ripped, and her face was raw from the cold. She was not a guest. She was a refugee, someone who had seen the lights and come seeking only warmth. She looked at the crowd, her eyes wide with fear, ready to run. I did not hesitate. I stood up from the symbolic chair. I walked over to her, my hand out. "Welcome," I said. "We have been waiting for you. You are in the right place." I led her back to the fireplace, to the warmest spot in the room. I gestured to the seat I had just occupied. "Oh, no," she whispered, shaking her head. I cannot. That is a special chair." "It is," I said, smiling. "It is for you." She sat, her entire body trembling, and Arlo was instantly at her side with a steaming mug of soup and a hot plate of food. Sarah, the reporter, lowered her camera, her eyes wet. She did not take that picture. That moment was not for the world. It was for us. My phone buzzed. It was an email from the anonymous foundation, the one with the matching grant. Subject: Match activated. The Open Seat Fund has officially met its public donation criteria. The $1 million matching grant has been activated and transferred. Congratulations. Keep building tables. I opened the donation portal Arlo had built. A live ticker was running in the corner. The numbers, they were spinning, a cascade of donations from all over the country. The number climbed past 2 million, then kept going. It looked like fireworks. My mother's kitchen was not just funded, it was endowed, Forever. Perhaps she sensed it. Perhaps she felt the final, definitive shift in the universe, the closing of her world and the opening of mine. A figure appeared at the edge of the light, standing just outside the open doors, in the snow. It was Sloane. She was not the manicured hostess of Thanksgiving. She was not the lawyer-flanked victim of the town square. She was just a woman, alone, in a dark coat. Her Lexus was gone, repossessed by the bank after the morals clause was triggered. Her reputation was ash. Her court date for the assault and a new, separate charge of fraud was set for January. She was staring in, at the warmth, at the crowd, at the husband who had finally, decisively, left her. She was a ghost, locked outside in the cold, just as I had been. The music stopped. The room watched her. I walked toward the door, stopping 10 feet away. She just stared at me, her face pale, defeated. I did not gloat. I did not taunt. I just said, my voice quiet. "This is an open table. Sloane, there is a seat here for anyone, even you. But you have to be willing to apologize. You have to ask." I offered her the one thing she had never, ever offered me, a path, a chance for grace. She looked at my healed face. She looked at my father, who was watching her, his face grim, no longer afraid. She looked at the community, united and strong. Her pride, the only thing she had left, was an armor she could not, or would not, remove. She said nothing. She just turned her back, a single, stiff, rigid movement, and she walked away, disappearing into the darkness, beyond the light of the 1,000 lamps. The falling snow quickly, and finally, covered her footprints. I turned back to the room, to my family. I picked up my own mug of cider. I raised it high. "To everyone," I said, my voice ringing in the rafters, "who has ever been left in the hallway. To everyone who was ever told they were too much or not enough. To everyone who ever slept in their car on Thanksgiving night, listening to the party inside." I looked around the room, at all of them, my new, strange, beautiful, resilient family. "From now on," I said, "we have the key. We are the key. Cheers." The room roared. Cheers. The camera, if there was one, would pan across the long, unbroken line of people. It would move past my father, talking quietly with Aunt Mara, finally listening, past Chief Cole, laughing with the nurses, past Arlo, Sierra, and Beck, already sketching plans on a napkin for the plumbing at Boulder Crest. It would push in, past the fire, to the single chair, the one carved for the one who felt unseen. It was no longer an empty symbol, it was full. The woman I had let in was fast asleep, a half-eaten plate on her lap, a warm blanket tucked around her shoulders. Safe, the seat, at last, was taken. Thank you all for listening to my story. I want to know where you are listening from, so please comment below. Let us connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.